The Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, number 149. Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
You were like the carrot top of interviewers.
Wow, how disappointing was that question?
You did not just ask me that.
It's a very big question.
Never mind, I'm done. I'm not doing the show.
Wow, I can't believe it.
I'm telling you, I'm hooked.
Nick.
Yeah, he's so awesome. He's so a good friend of mine.
Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick. Thanks so much for joining me. You can follow us along on social media. We're on Instagram at Fancounters Live. You can also join our Facebook group by searching Fancounters. We've got a lot of requests in the last couple weeks for Sharpie Nation, which is our private Facebook group. You can join us there for hopefully what will become more intimate discussion. I just haven't been on lately to discuss the episodes with you, but that'll soon change. So join Sharpie Nation. Sitting to my left is a friend of mine for over 20 years. Tracy, welcome to Fancounters. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you. How you doing?
Good. Now, his voice should sound familiar because he's been voicing the intro of the show ever since we started. Thank you.
You are welcome. It was an honor.
So now he is on the show because, I always advertise that if you want to have a celebrity come on the show, I will bring you on to interview the celebrity with me and kind of do that sort of thing, except this worked the opposite, where he brought the celebrity and then brought me along to interview the celebrity with him on my show.
Hey, whatever works, right?
That is whatever works. All right. Before we get started, we've got some breaking celebrity news.
And now, shocking celebrity news of the week.
All right. This week we lost some legends, man. This is tough.
Yeah, we sure did. The biggest one was Eddie Van Halen, probably the guitar legend, Eddie Van Halen. That was a huge loss, and he's going to be greatly missed.
And then also I heard a guitarist or lead singer from Red Hot Chili Peppers died too. That was like yesterday.
See, I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
And then we also lost Johnny Nash too.
Johnny Nash. Why does that name sound familiar?
He's saying he died the same day that Eddie Van Halen did. I'm trying to think of the name of the song that made him really famous. I Can See Clearly Now. That was it. I Can See Clearly Now. The Rain Is Gone. Remember that song?
Yeah. The death toll started to really hit hard in April when Joe Diffie died. You and I both had many encounters with Joe Diffie backstage and introducing him on stage and just...
I even opened for Joe Diffie. He's a great guy.
Yeah, well, he was, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're losing a lot of people this year. It seems like maybe that's just the lack of news other than the election and the virus that has been, really publicizing these deaths. But it's been a tough year for sure.
I've been a wrestling fan for years too, and then you hear about these wrestlers that passed away this year too. It's been crazy.
Yeah. Let's talk about something on a happier note here for celebrity news. As we know, we've been talking. Last week, we talked to an actress who is back in production in Canada, so they are filming again, and that is a great thing. They're taking precautions to make sure that it's safe and all of that, which is great. But there's a startling poll that came out on TMZ about whether or not you'll go back to the movie theaters when they reopen. What's funny about that is they're already open here where we are in Wisconsin.
Yes, they are.
And I've been back since. So will you go back when the movie theaters are, really up and running?
Oh, sure. I'd even go back right now. I just haven't had a movie that's come out that I want to see yet.
This is startling, though, because the TMZ poll, 17,700 people took the poll. 34% of them said they would go. 66% said never going back. Can you believe that?
Wow. That's huge.
That's a major red flag to the movie industry.
That could destroy the movie industry.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, and some of my favorite jobs that I thought would be a great thing to do is to run either a live theater type building, or a movie theater. And obviously those seem to be the most struggling right now with nobody being able to go see stuff in person.
Yeah, and it's hard because how do you sit at home and watch the stuff? It's no different than if you're watching a YouTube video or Netflix or Hulu. It just doesn't feel the same. You don't get the same experience.
No, and you can have a great sound system, but there's nothing like sitting in the theater with a humongous screen and the speakers everywhere around you.
George Lucas's sound company that's in everything, you know?
Yeah. All right, stay tuned after the episode today. We've got a fantastic podcast plug. I plugged this a couple weeks ago when I said that we would get back to Dax Shepard, my arch nemesis. We're going to talk about him after the show today, so stay tuned. On the show today, we've got Bubba Bradley, courtesy of my friend Tracy. Bubba is a nationally touring comedian. He was last seen on NBC's Last Comic Standing. He's also appeared on some episodes of The Glades, Nashville, and even a reenactment of the 700 Club. So we'll ask him about that. But the one thing I do want to make sure I ask him about is this film that he did called Shark Exorcist. Have you seen the movie?
I have not.
Oh, my gosh. He says it's terrible. He's in it.
That's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Before we get into it, Tracy, how do you and Bubba know each other?
Well, Bubba and I know each other via my son, Tyler.
Okay.
When he lived down in Nashville, he became really good friends with Bubba. And then when I went down to Nashville to visit, I got to meet Bubba while I was down there. Then until before Tyler moved back, Bubba came up and performed at Potawatomi.
Okay.
And
it's a casino here in Milwaukee.
My wife and I went to go see him and had a good time with him. And ever since then, we've kept in touch. So.
Cool. He's a touring comedian. He's going to share stories of the road and much more. So let's get going. Bubba Bradley, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate y'all having me.
No problem. Now, season 7 of Last Comic Standing is where some of our audience saw you. Now, you had mentioned to me in the pre-interview that was very early on in your career. So how's your comedy changed from that appearance on the show? How have you grown? You know, how would you describe your growth in the career?
I would say the biggest growth I had is confidence. I mean, when you're a fresh comic starting out, is the hardest thing to do is have the confidence on the stage to when you're telling a joke. If you see a lot of comics that are new, they're afraid to pause on stage because they're afraid of the silence. It's the best thing that experience and time will give you is that when you're accustomed to it and you're used to it and you have that confidence on stage. I've had times on stage where I've just sat down and looked at the audience and they're just like, I just didn't say a word. And it was just fun because I'm like, what are you doing? You never took a break at your job, which not my joke. It's I think a lot of comics do it, but it was just fun to have that dynamic. That's how you know you're doing good too. If you can just stop talking and everyone is silent, then you know you're doing your job. But I think confidence is the biggest thing. I really didn't have it. I was maybe 2 years into my comedy at that point, and I've never done comedy before. I was literally bouncing in a bar in Montana, and 2 LA comics came in to do a show. They happened to know one of the bartenders, and they wanted somebody to open up, and I said, I'll do it. And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right. And they couldn't find anyone to do it. And they're like, hey, do you want to do it? I said, yeah, that's what I said. I'll do it. And they took me on the road with them.
Wow. That's a
cool.
Good performance then.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I had some funny stuff.
That's awesome. So you were voted class clown in high school. So being that you were funny, and it went back a long way, what was your moment when you knew you had to pursue being a comedian for a career?
I always wanted to do it. I never had the courage to get up and do it. I liked the attention. I always thought that I had a funny perspective. I was good at stories. But, I mean, I don't think if them guys would have ever came to the bar and took me with them, I probably would have never had the foresight to get on a stage and actually go do it. So probably at that time is when, I was like, well, now's my chance. But, yeah, I don't think if that situation would have happened, I might have never done it.
Wow. I don't know if you're religious, but if you believe in God, that had to be an interventional moment there, I think.
Oh, I for sure. I mean, I always tell a story that the whole reason I ended up in Montana where I was is because one night I was in Pennsylvania where I grew up, and I was tired of where I was living, so I applied for a job that had room and board, which happened to be Yellowstone National Park. And this is an insignificant thing I did one day and forgot all about it. And then 3 months later, I got a call for a job at Yellowstone, and I'm like, I don't never apply to Yellowstone. I'd forgotten. And that took me to Montana, which led me to the bar, which led me to comedy. So
that's amazing.
It's fun. Yeah, it's funny how one little choice can determine, can really change your whole your whole life.
That's kind of interesting. You think about that. What if I did a different decision in my life? Where would I be? That's kind of like what it sounds like for you. Wow.
Yeah, one little tiny choice that I made that I forgot about put me where I am. So it's weird.
Bubba, we've talked with performers for months now who are struggling because of COVID. Hasn't really allowed them to work, whether they work in Broadway or even film, television, and movies. And because performances are on hold practically everywhere, you once called comedy forced poverty, but I bet that's never really been true now that you've had to deal with the lack of income because you're not able to tour. So how are you keeping your comedic timing razor sharp?
For me, I'm kind of a weird one. I've been told a lot by a lot of comics that I don't know if you can call it an idiot savant or not. I don't want to sound braggish on that, but I've always had an ability to just be off stage for a month or two at a time and get back on and not miss a beat. I'm very lucky like that. But as far as that goes, I mean, I try to social media, make videos, just to try to keep sharp. But I mean, I never really had an issue of not being on stage and then getting back on and kind of starting where I stopped. So I'm kind of lucky in that respect. And I've been driving truck through the pandemic.
Wow.
So,
well, you have to do what you got to do.
Yeah, well, there was a point in time where I was driving truck and doing comedy. I was booking loads and doing shows, so it was kind of a fun thing. I would literally pull up to the comedy club in a big rig, and I'd go do my show, and I'd hop back in, and I'd go finish out where I was going.
That's awesome.
How did the people, when you pull up in that big rig, how did they act when they're like, oh my gosh, look at this artist is coming here in a big semi or something?
Right. Well, the reaction was funny, but a lot of people that didn't see me actually come in the semi, but I would talk about it on stage, and then when I would meet people afterwards, I'd walk out to it, and they would be like, "Oh," they're like, "You really drove this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I really did. It's right there." So.
You're living in Nashville or on the outskirts of Nashville right now, and we know Nashville is famous for country music, but what is the comedy scene like down there?
Comedy scene in Nashville is great. I mean, I got there in 2013. I was in Montana, and I had a manager at the time, and he kept saying, "You need to go to LA, you need to go to New York." And I'm like, I really don't want to do that. It's just not my scene. He said, "Well, you need to kind of get to a city." So I said, "Well, I'll go to Nashville." And I came in just as it was starting to blow up. I mean, there was a lot of good guys there. There was a great local scene. Zanies is a great club, became my home club, did a lot of shows there. So the scene in Nashville was just great. It's just booming. And now everything's moving there, it seems.
We talk with actors all the time who appear on some of our favorite television shows, and you are no exception. We talked about it in our opening that you were on a few episodes of Nashville and The Glades. Can you walk us through some of those memorable experiences you had being a part of a big television production like that?
Yeah, I mean, Nashville was fun, for sure. I've done quite a few of those. Most of them were just like small extra work, but there was an episode where I actually was featured, and I played a roadie for a couple of the people on that. It was a lot of fun. I mean, just it amazes me the time and the energy that goes into just making one scene, because they'd have 500 extras for the whole day for 12 hours, and they built this giant houses and just this whole set inside this warehouse in Nashville, and the money, the people, the time, and all for like a 3-minute clip. We'd spend 2 days shooting a 3-minute clip for it. It amazes me what goes into that. I did Master of None with Aziz Ansari, and we filmed in Nashville downtown, and it was funny. We were doing it outside. They had the block shut down because people walking by, they had to know that we were filming. And Aziz came over and he was talking to me, telling me, what he wanted me to do, how he wanted the scene to go, because he was also directing. Mm-hmm. And we got everybody set up, and I was on my mark, and everyone was ready to go. Aziz was walking across the street, and somebody happened to come around the corner that wasn't paying attention and then recognized me. And right as he yelled, action, he's like, "Bubba!" And I was like, he's like, "Cut." I'm like, "Oh, man." And he had no idea. He's like, "What are you doing, man?" I'm like, "We're filming the thing." And he's like,
You just screwed it up.
And Aziz just looked at me and laughed, and I was like, "I'm sorry."
That's hilarious.
You didn't get fired for it, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, no, I didn't get fired for it, but it was just funny. He just came in at the perfect moment, happened to know who I was, and just ruined the whole scene.
Sometimes you audition for things that you don't get. Is a role on Sons of Anarchy one of those roles you really wish you had gotten?
Yeah, I mean, I did really well. I had a bunch of callbacks on that, and that felt to me like that would have been just a sweet spot for me.
You were auditioning for Filthy Phil, correct?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I was. And yeah, it would have been awesome to be able to
Filthy Phil
to do that.
Yeah. He was a pretty interesting character. I watched Sons of Anarchy, and he made it through 30 episodes, I think it was, before they killed him.
Yeah, he had a good run on it, and ended up I think he got killed eating cereal. So
yeah,
if I'm right, I'm not sure if I'm right on that.
I think that's what it was. I'm trying to remember back.
That's a heck of a way to go, and I would have been happy to do it.
I bet you would.
I love riding bikes, man. I feel, and I've always been typecast no matter what I got, really, because I'm a big guy. So, it's either like the redneck or, biker or hillbilly.
He does have the biker image look when, you go see him in person, because he wears the cutoff jean jacket.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the sleeves are cut off. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. He's huge. He's much bigger than I am. So, height-wise, he's probably like 6'6". Or something like that.
Yeah,
that's probably why they picked him for that. He's just gigantic, and I'm just cutting in under 6 foot, so which is still huge in the celebrity world.
One of the things that I watched a trailer for last night is a little movie called Shark Exorcist. I really recommend everybody go check out the trailer. It's no Jaws, I'll tell you that. So, did you owe somebody a favor?
We'll attribute that one to Craigslist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Before I got my agent, because now I have an agent, of course.
They wouldn't let that happen.
No, they would have never allowed that. But Donald Farmer, who is like a big, he's like the king of B movies. He made Chainsaw Cheerleaders, or he's huge in like the really crappy horror movies. But they had an ad on Craigslist, and I just happened to apply for it. And, we went, and he's like, "Yeah, it's called Shark Exorcist, and you're gonna play a cameraman." And I was like, "All right, let's do it." And it was interesting, and I don't know if I've never even seen the movie, to be honest with you. So I don't know what they kept in and what they didn't, but I was telling him a story about a run-in I had with Miley Cyrus, and he loved his laughing. I don't know if he put it in or not, but it was it was interesting. It was a fun experience for me.
Did you have a real run-in with Miley Cyrus?
I did.
Well, do tell.
Well, sure. I don't know if I can. I don't know if you're able to edit, or we'll see if it's okay. But so we were shooting a music video it was on El Matador Beach, which is, I don't know if you ever watched The Notebook, but the cliffs in LA.
Oh, we've all had to see The Notebook.
So it's a really pretty beach. I think it's a private beach as well. But we were walking down, and I happened to walk by. There was 2 girls, and she had a dog. It was a husky. And as I was walking by, the dog came up and like kind of jumped on my leg, and I was petting the dog, and I looked up and I saw that it was a girl. And when the girl walked up to me, I'm like, "You really need to teach your dog to walk up to cuter guys on the beach, And she laughed. When she laughed, I realized it was Miley Cyrus, and I talked to her for a few minutes, and she was such a sweetheart. She was just talking to me, and I walked away, and my manager was there, and he's like, "Hey, you know who that was?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was Miley Cyrus." I'm like, "She's on my crush list, And she kind of heard me, and I was just joking, and it became a whole weird thing. But we figured it out. It wasn't too bad.
So
I'll do this one. You do the next one.
You know what? But back to the Shark Exorcist thing.
Yeah.
I gotta check this movie out. Am I gonna have to listen to Baby Shark when it comes on? Is that the theme song for the movie?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No.
I think maybe Shark's a little too G-rated for Shark Exorcist, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it's eating
You know,
people.
Donald Farmer showed up. He showed up to the set, and one of the girls that was working, you know it's a good movie when he literally showed up with a can of pea soup. He had like props. He's like good. He didn't even care about continuity or anything. I was doing one line and it was awful, and I'm like, "Hey, do you want to do that again?" He's like, "Nope." I'm like, "Okay."
Wow.
Yes, we're moving right along.
We don't have the budget for that. We got to keep rolling.
We don't have the money for you to be better. So, just I think I did it for $20 and a piece of pizza afterwards. So.
Hey, pizza's important, man.
I've made projects with perks like that.
Craigslist is funny because that's actually how I got my agent.
Really?
I got a music video with Tara Thompson, who was a country singer, and actually it's what got me to be SAG eligible as well. So it worked out pretty well on the Craigslist.
Wow. So there are some legit things on there, apparently.
Well, becoming a member of SAG, that's pretty cool just by being in a music video, hey?
I think it costs a lot of money, doesn't it, Bubba?
To become SAG?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to pay the dues. I've never done it. My agent said it's probably, it's harder to do. It depends on what state you're in. If you're in California, then maybe, but
yeah,
the right to work state, I believe. So there's no point in being in a union.
I am sure this is common, but your material probably does come from your real life. You mentioned that you were a security guard at Yellowstone. And one of the things that I heard was that you heckled tourists while on the job.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had fun with people. Yeah, I definitely.
Like, what are you saying to the tourists to not get you fired, though?
Well, I guess it's how you deliver it. Because I definitely got in trouble. I got quarantined. I wasn't a great security guard. I got quarantined, which is funny because this was in 2006, and so you have Yellowstone, and then you have Xanterra, which works in the park. They run all the hospitalities, like the hotels and all the restaurants and everything inside the park. That's who I worked for. And they had dorms you lived in, and you weren't allowed to have a fire. You weren't allowed to have open containers on Xanterra property, which they rented from the Park Service. But if it was Park Service property, then you could have an open flame. You could do whatever you wanted. So I found that loophole, and as a security guard one night, I threw a party on Park Service property. We were drinking. We had a fire in a barrel, and security kept coming up, and they all knew me, obviously. And I was like, well, you really can't do anything because this is legit. And they got mad, and I partied till 5 a.m, and I had to work at 7 a.m, but I was still drunk. And what I did is, it was just poor timing on my part. I called in sick, that couldn't work, and I told them that I had stomach issues and that I was throwing up. And it just so happened at the same time, there was like a brucellosis or the beaver fever, whatever it is. That was Giardia, maybe.
Okay.
It was a breakout in the park. So they didn't want to fire me because they didn't really have the people to lose me. So and he knew I was full of crap. And he's like, well, I guess if you have that, we're going to have to quarantine you for, 10 days or whatever it was. So I had to stay in my room. They brought me my meals. I wasn't allowed to leave. So it was kind of like a little, here you go. You want to play that game? We'll play this game. But that's how I got quarantined in Yellowstone.
Nice little vacation there, hey? With getting served food and everything.
Yeah, they brought it right to my room. It was awesome. My brother was mad because he was out there with me, and he had to be quarantined as well. He's like, I didn't do anything. I'm like, I know, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you were together, so how bad could it be?
Right? And when you get fired at Yellowstone, literally what they do is they drop you off at the end of the park, and they're like, okay, see ya. Pretty much what they do. I mean, and that's how I ended up in Bozeman, Montana, because my brother got fired, and so we had to leave the park. They actually gave us a ride to Bozeman, but they dropped us off at a hotel, and we were, 2,000 miles from home. So, like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I guess we're going to live in this hotel, and we became housekeepers at the hotel. And
oh, my gosh.
I walked into the bar called the Molly Brown, which is where I ended up working, where I met the comics. I walked in one day, and I got a job bouncing. And so if I ever write a book, I want to call it from choke outs to chuckles.
Yep.
That's a good title.
Yeah, I like it. From bouncing to comedy.
All right, Bubba. So I heard that your family loves family reunions. Do you still have them?
We are not allowed to have family reunions anymore. It's court ordered. My family's pretty rowdy. We'd get together. I think there was like 3 or 4 years in a row. State troopers had to come and break up something. The last time there was gunfire involved.
What?
So
Wow.
yeah, it was. Yeah, a couple of my family members tried to kill a couple other of my family members, and troopers came, and then it was a big mess. So they're just like, yeah, we don't really want you gathering in our county anymore. So if you could not do that, it'd be great. And that was the last one I ever had. So
wow.
Well, maybe you could have them all on your land now, hey?
I don't want them out here. I love my family, but no, we're good. And we have 19 acres out here in Tennessee, so there's plenty of room for activities, but they can – I love them, but they can stay back in Pennsylvania.
On Fancounters, we like to ask about your encounters with fans that might have stand out in your mind as memorable. So, Bubba, have you had any weird or crazy or fun experiences with your fans?
I remember one of my funnest ones actually was I was doing a show in Moorhead, Minnesota, and it was at, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on all these names, but Fargo, Moorhead, Courtney's Comedy Club.
Okay.
One of the comedy clubs where Mitch Hedberg actually used to perform at, I believe. But I was doing a show there, and there was the whole audience was all Native Americans. And after the show, they all came up and they were talking to me, and the one guy goes, hey, man, he's like, we got a bus. Do you want to go hang out? And I was like, sure, I don't see why I wouldn't. So it was me and probably 60, and they were all Sioux from North Dakota, or they were Sioux from Minnesota. I'm not sure which one, but they all took a bus in, and I hopped on the bus with them, and we went back to the hotel, and I'm pretty sure I got married because the one girl's mom gave me a bottle of Jack, and then another guy came up. He's like, Dad, that's the wedding dowry. You know that, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I like that, but I guess I'm married now. Whatever, it's fine. But we ended up getting kicked out of the hotel because we were too loud. And there was a girl standing outside, and she started talking to us, and she's like, what are you doing? We're like, we're partying, but we got kicked out of the hotel. She's like, well, do you want to come back to my house? So we're like, yeah. So me and a bus full of all these people went to her house and partied till like 6, 7 in the morning. It was a lot of fun on that one.
When you were doing, with your comedy, did you have any times where you were being heckled, that you had to deal with? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, I definitely gotten heckled a little bit. Nothing too major, really. I had one guy in Idaho Falls, Idaho. I think he wanted to rush the stage, and he was just being really ignorant. I didn't know how to do it. I said something mean to him. I'm not even sure what I said to him, but I had enough. I try to be as nice as possible. I'm not hateful. I don't try to be, but I said something to him. He stood up. So I was just like, I just dropped the mic down. I'm like, all right, man, if you're going to come up, let's do this because I got a show to do. He just kind of looked at me, what? I'm like, let's do it. And he just sat back down. I'm like, all right, we're good to go now. I can finish.
That's cool. I've heard you may have had a stalker. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I did. We were in, I'm blanking out on everything today. But where were we at? We're in Indiana doing a show, and I was hanging out with one of the waitresses there, and we were kind of chatting up in the green room and talking, and I said, well, all right, we're going to go. And so me and the guy I was touring with got in the car, and we're driving, and I told him, I said, I swear to God, this car is following us. And he's like, yeah, you're just being paranoid. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. I go to turn in the hotel. The car follows us into the hotel. And I'm like, dude, look. He's like, nah, you're being paranoid. I'm like, all right. So I'm in my room, and next thing you know, I get a knock on my door, and I look through the peephole, and it was her.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I never gave her my room number. So I'm like, I don't know how she got my room number. I didn't answer the door. And then the next thing you know, I was on the first floor, and I heard my window try to open.
Oh.
Like, all right, now we're trying to get in the window. I called the front desk, and I'm like, did you give somebody my room number? And they did. And I said, well, we got a problem because they're trying to get in my window. So I made a move to a whole new hotel. And I never stayed on the first floor ever again.
Wow. You never got the chance to confront her, though, right?
No, I did not, because then we called the club the next day, and I was like, listen, man, I said, I don't want her fired or anything, because, you know, she probably has a family. I said, but that was just, I feel it was inappropriate.
Yeah.
So we had a show the next night, and she wasn't there. So I'm just hoping that, you know, I hope she didn't get fired, but you don't try to come into someone's window.
Who knows? She could have been the Miss Bubba Bradley, you know? She could have ended up being that.
Yeah, that's true. Or I could end up being in her basement for a little bit.
I think that's more likely.
They'd be like, she'd be like up at the top of the well going, and he puts the lotion on, right?
Yeah, that's told. I don't want to do what is told. I don't want to. We don't need I was trying to think of who sings that song, Come to My Window.
That is Melissa Etheridge, right?
Yes.
Yes,
it is.
Come on, I'm good for some random facts.
Yeah, we don't need a Melissa Etheridge moment.
No.
Don't come to my window. Just stay.
Partying seems like it's a common theme here, and this is a big year for you because, like my wife, you're turning 40. Is that right?
That is correct. I have turned 40.
Oh, you have already? Okay, well, happy birthday. But
Thank you.
let's rewind 10 years ago, because I read that you threw a party that had 6 rock bands, 9 kegs of beer, a 50-foot slip and slide, all that overflowed a rented rec center. Not to mention that the cops showed up 6 times. So how are you going to top that for 40?
I don't think I can ever top that.
I don't think so.
That was amazing. It was called Bradapalooza, and I have a buddy who he owns a production company. It's called Farmageddon Records, and we kind of met up. And I'm like, man, I want to have a birthday bash. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So we're gonna rent out a park in Bozeman. He's like, I got a bunch of bands that'll come. I'm like, sure. The bar that I worked at, she supplied kegs, and we had the slip and slide. And man, we partied all night long. Yeah, the cops were mad. The best part about it was the next day we went to go get our deposit back, and when I went into the office, the girl's like, no. She's like, not only are you not getting your money back, you are never allowed to rent a park in Bozeman again. Never. She's like, we had a line of people here in the morning to complain about you guys last night. She's like, so no. I'm like, well, all right.
Not to mention the line of people that were probably sleeping on the ground still.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about a park in the neighborhood. Next thing you know, you got all of us, and there's rock bands going off. And I got ridden down to slip and slide. That was probably the first save a rap, ride a fat kid moment I had. This was one of my jokes and my shirts that I sell. So it was a lot of fun, man. I don't think I can top that, though. Now it's more back, and I don't do as crazy stuff.
I have an idea for you, Bubba.
I love ideas.
So since you've got 19 acres now, why don't you have Bubba Fest every year at your place?
Yeah, I would. My wife would probably kill me. She's so good. She keeps me in line because I am a lot. Everyone sees, me on stage, and they're like, "Oh my God, it'd be awesome to hang out with you all the time." And I'm like, it's really not. I'm obnoxious. I can be annoying. I'm a lot to handle. I'm needy, but God bless me, he does it. And yeah, so she keeps me in line. She's like, you shouldn't do this, and I'm like, you're probably right, but I'm gonna probably do it anyways.
Hard to find good women like that, right?
Oh, it really is. It really is. And yeah, she's great. She's awesome. She keeps me in check. I forget what comic said it, but he's like, man, I didn't realize that I didn't have to do things. He's talking about his girlfriend telling him to stick up for himself. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I think it was John Mulaney. He's hilarious. But it's kind of how I felt about that. She'll tell me something. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Why have I been doing that this whole time?
I didn't realize that you were married. Do you have little Bubbas running around too?
I do not have any of my own little Bubbas, but I have a couple of stepchildren. And that's much better for me. I like the turnkey much better.
I like that, a turnkey. There you go.
Ready to go. I mean, they're all older. The youngest is 14 now, so we met 3 years ago. He was 11. So, I mean, it's
okay.
It's going. The funny part is, out of her 3 kids, the youngest is a bigger kid. He looks just like I do. He looks so much like me to the point that his dad literally asked my wife, he's like, so how long have you known Bubba? Just because he looks that much like me. Like, did you meet him 11 years ago, maybe? But we hadn't. But he just looks so much like me.
And
it was fun.
Your wife is fairly supportive of your touring and your career and all that. Like, does it get tough at times?
Yeah, it does. She had a hard time with, like, we're talking about fans and the lot of girls, and because people want to come up to you after the show, and I'm a hugger. They want to hug and talk to me. So I think she struggled with that, but she knows who I am. I'm not too crazy in that aspect, but I think that was their biggest adjustment, or just kind of sharing me, with people. That's got to be tough.
Yeah.
There was one where I was doing a show and I wasn't paying attention, and I threw my hotel room key just on the stage, and I just didn't pay any attention to it because apparently I don't care about getting murdered. And some girls picked it up, and she like swooped over and yanked it. She's like, no. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I survived these past 10 years.
Oh man.
Just, there's my hotel room key. Just come in and do what you will.
That's crazy.
So talk to us a little bit about the material that you've released to date. Where can we buy it? What do you got for sale?
Well, right now, so I have my CD. It's on Spotify. I believe it's on the iTunes. It's called, it's Bubba Bradley, Save a Raft, Ride a Fat Kid. That was my original CD that I put out. I'm writing new content now. I don't know what direction it's going to go. I need to get back out. Once comedy starts to open back up again, I'm going to start working on a second album. And so we got that, iTunes, Spotify. But as far as social media goes, Facebook, YouTube, I got a series of stories on YouTube called That Time I, and it's stories with Bubba Bradley. So
Nice.
It's a lot of Yellowstone, a lot of just growing up. So that's basically what I got going on right now.
What's the name of the YouTube channel?
Bubba Bradley.
Okay, just search that. And then what about on Instagram? What's your handle there?
Same thing, Bubba Bradley. And then I also have my podcast, which I got about 10 episodes in and kind of put it on hold, but we're going to start it back up again. That's called All Things Country Podcast, ATC Pod. That's on Instagram as well.
You're doing that podcast now?
I stopped. I'm going to start it up here probably within the next month or so.
Oh, let me know when you do. We will plug you.
Yeah, definitely.
Not in the way in which we're going to plug the next podcast that we're about to talk about, but we'll plug you in a different way.
Right?
Hey,
I would love that.
Hey, real quick, Bubba. How did you come up with the stage name Bubba Bradley?
Sure. That's I was working at the bar in Montana, and the owner happened to order all the bouncers like bowling shirts, to bowling security shirts. So like a button up, looked like a bowling shirt, and they sent like 5 or 6 of them, and mine was a 4X, and they all had names on it like Dale and Jim, and the 4X just happened to have Bubba on it because it was a big shirt. It was actually the shirt that I wore when I first started doing comedy, which is funny now because what I wear doing comedy now is actually the vest that your son made me, which is amazing, and I love that thing. You should probably have seen pictures of it. He made that motorcycle style vest.
Yeah.
He's such a talented kid, man.
Well, thank you.
But he made that for me. Yeah. So the first show I did, I didn't even have a name. They're like, how do you want us to bring you up? I'm like, I don't know, do this. And after the show, my first name is Brad. So he's like, well, what do you want to go by? And he looked at my shirt. He said, Bubba. I said, I like that. He's like, how about Bubba Bradley? And I said, I like that. Let's go with that. So that's where it came from. So it was a bowling shirt.
Bubba, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wished we would have asked you about? Upcoming shows? Probably not, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't have any upcoming shows. I've had a few opportunities. I've just kind of passed on them.
You going to get up here by Potawatomi
because I was
Casino?
getting kind of burnt out, and I want to kind of revamp where I'm at. And it's hard in this political climate. People are touchy. I never say anything really bad, and I'm not a dirty comic. I like to toe the line a little bit. I like to say, if you get offended at my show, it's because that's how you perceived it. I've never said anything offensive, but you took it to be so. So that's how I kind of like to write. I'm not in your face about it, but it's tricky now. So I'm excited to get back out. I got a new perspective being married now with kids, and I'm just kind of excited to see where it goes.
That can lead you to a whole new raft of material, couldn't it?
Absolutely, man. So I'm really excited to kind of delve back into it. I love being on stage. I love being around people. I always love, meeting fans afterwards. So that's the biggest part of me. It's never the fame, which, I had some minor success. I'm not, I wouldn't say huge by any means, but I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking, and I know it's a lot of fun it's a crazy thing that you can get paid to do that.
I hope you get up to Potawatomi again so we can come see you again.
That was awesome. My favorite part about Potawatomi was we went up there. We were doing the theater. I was headlining the theater, and when I got there, the hotel manager came up and greeted us, and he's like, "Here, we got this for you." And they're like, "Dressing room's back here." He's like, "I got some bad news." I'm like, "All right." He's like, "You're gonna have to share the dressing room with some showgirls." And I was like, "Oh."
What's the bad news?
Time. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what's the bad news? One of the girls I actually became really good friends with. She's a really, really, really good singer. She does a bunch of stuff. So it was really fun, but I was just like, oh, my first world problems, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Bubba, thanks so much for taking your time out of your morning here to chat with us. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. It was a good time, man.
Absolutely. I'm glad I got the opportunity to do it. I appreciate you guys.
All right, we're going to transition to the next segment. So do you want to talk a little bit about Dax? You know Dax Shepard, right?
Personally, I do not.
Well, not personally, but as a comic.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so he was on a show called Smartless with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, Sean Hayes. Never heard of Sean Hayes. And so we're going to just run through a little bit of this episode. And Bubba, the reason why we talk about celebrities who have podcasts is because they tend to turn into I invite my friends and we chat about a lot of inside jokes. Nobody has any idea what we're talking about. And that's kind of what this turned out to be. Like I played 2 weeks ago a clip from the show Smartless where they had Jennifer Aniston on as a guest. And one of the guys goes, yeah, I'm really not sure like what even to ask Jennifer Aniston that a fan would want to know about. Like, then you shouldn't be hosting a podcast.
That's right.
So...
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into it.
Nothing better than free advertising. Here is this week's podcast plug.
Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about this show, Smartless. You've never heard it either, Trace, right?
I never have, no.
Okay. So here's the deal. Dax Shepard is kind of an arch nemesis because he's got so many listeners and his show is just crazy awful. The reason why I call it awful is because of a little clip that I have here that I'm going to play for you right now.
Is this the Armchair podcast or?
So he hosts Armchair Expert, but he's a guest on this one show.
Okay.
All right. So this is the opening of the show for Smartless.
Welcome to Smartless with Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and me, Will Arnett. Each week, one of us brings on a special guest and surprises the other two. They don't know who the guest is.
Yeah, but we do. It's the amazing Dax Shepard, actor turned podcast interviewer, and he is awful, and I'm going to show you why. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this podcast, Smartless, and I can sum it up with one clip from their show.
And I wasn't there in this story, so I'm kind of bored by it.
Oh, my God.
They tell a lot of stories that we weren't there for. They have a lot of inside jokes that we don't get, but they expect us to laugh. And Bubba, this is crazy. And you're going to, I don't know, you've launched your podcast already, right?
Yeah, I launched, it was probably a couple of years ago when I actually launched.
So did you get 9,000 reviews before you hit 10 episodes?
I did not.
Yeah, neither did I. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong here. So if you want to know why I have this like beef with Dax, it's because I created this compilation. It's almost a minute long of all of the mouth noises and condescending remarks he makes during an interview that he did with Fred Savage. So let me play a little bit of that here for you.
Welcome. Uh-huh. Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Yeah. Right.
Which was,
mm-hmm.
and I was like,
yeah. Yes.
Can't even.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It can't be.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sure. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Said,
Right.
He goes,
yeah. Of course. Ah.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's a popular podcast.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Maybe we're doing it wrong. Maybe we should go just some more and ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I didn't interrupt you enough during your interview for people to like the show or what. I can't figure it out.
The key is to just get right in there and don't let them ever answer a question. And then you're good.
Oh my God, I'm glad you said that. This works into a segment really great because they, on this show, Smartless, these three actors take over 50 to 60 seconds to ask one single question. And then
wow.
it's amazing.
What's so hard about asking a question?
Well, here, I'll play you an example in just a minute.
I'm super excited about our guest today. He's a fella that we all know and we love very much. He's originally from the suburbs of Detroit. And this, I didn't know, graduated magna cum laude from UCLA in anthropology. What? I did not know that. And I've known this man for a long time.
You should know about your guests before you bring them on the show. I'm just saying. You probably should know everything about them.
Yeah.
He's been very successful in everything he does.
Andy Richter.
Movies, movies, TV shows, to his marriage, to being a father, to his own podcast, from which we could all learn a thing or two.
Dax Shepard.
Yeah. The thing we can learn is how not to podcast. Truly. Okay, so immediately he comes on the show and he's called out for having chewing tobacco in his mouth, which is always a great thing to do on a podcast, to call out something visual that the audience can't see. So then Will Arnett pipes up to tell us about what we can learn from Dax.
Jason, here's where you could learn from Dax. When I did Dax's podcast, he let me up there in his space. He let me blow some darts, and I was killing the butts, and he never mentioned it on the air. And then he comes on here. He's not on here 6 seconds before you're blowing up his spot.
And in the rare event that there's like 10 or 15 young men who look up to me, I find it hard to believe, but I certainly wouldn't want them packing a dip just to be like me.
I don't think anybody wants to be like him.
Yeah.
Did Will Arnett say blow some darts?
Yeah.
Glad you caught that.
I listened to that twice to go, oh, he's talking about cigarettes. I never heard that before.
We're in the 40s or 50s now, I guess. Going to go blow some darts in England, I guess. That's crazy.
Aside from being an actor and a comedian, Dax is known for being a drunk and getting sober, which, that's a great thing. But here's why he said he started a podcast. And by the way, I highlighted every time that Dax has trouble talking.
I was just, I was really, really moved with the response of being a guest on like Sam Jones, Mark Maron, a few of the long form ones. And as all of us have done, we're all comedians and we've all done a million talk shows. That pressure to be amazing in 6 minutes, which is fun. I love it. I love being on talk shows. But I wanted for like, I have more thoughts and I have more to offer and I have a bigger story to tell and I want to do it. But just again, largely just enjoying being on the long form ones so much and generally being open to being on people's.
That's not true. Because, Bubba, I invited Dax Shepard before I started hating him on my podcast several times. And this is the funny thing is he never responded, but his wife, Kristen Bell, politely declined. So I give his wife much more credit than Dax, who says, oh, yeah, I love being on podcasts. Well, then come on one.
Wait.
Right. Yeah.
He's married.
And if you
to
don't
Kristen.
if you want to do short form, don't add so many extra words in there.
He's married to Kristen Bell.
You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet you they have really
She
good
is
conversations.
Got to be a sweetheart. She's got to be a sweetheart.
I bet you they have really good conversations at home, hey?
Yeah.
But
he has the as a crutch word so much. It's like every fifth word. That's why the bell was ringing every time.
Well, that's what comics do when they first start out. You'll hear them on stage. It's the it's and they do that when they're panicky, and they'll to segue. They'll be like
Did you ever use
thinking?
When you first started? Did you ever use note cards up on stage?
I never did. No, there's a lot of comics that do. I've always been. I can memorize anything. I've got a great memory. So, and I've written every joke that I've ever written on stage. I've never written a single joke on a piece of paper.
Really?
Yeah, I've never once touched a notepad. Never wrote one joke down. Everything that I've done, I formed on stage, and I've worked on stage. I'm not as organized as that to do that. So, a lot of comics were just like, "Wow, okay." I'm like, it works, I guess.
That's amazing.
You don't have a written outline of your show, so you remember where you're going from one thing to the next, so that you have memorized?
Yep, all in my head.
Oh my gosh!
But then that allows my show to be a little fluid too. So I've had people come to 3 shows in a row, and they're like, "Oh my God, it was the same, but it was different every time." And it's kind of the same. I always said my show is like a sandwich. When you have a sandwich, you're going to start with a piece of bread at the top, piece of bread at the bottom, and something in the middle. So I always had, my joke that was my top piece of bread, my joke that was my bottom piece of bread, and whatever happened in the middle could be, whatever you want it to be. Peanut butter and jelly, ham, turkey. So that's kind of how I approach it. And it's fun for me because it changes it up a little bit.
Huh.
That's
amazing.
impressive.
That's amazing. Now, Bubba, I've made films and web series myself. Directing them especially, and he does get one thing right that I completely do agree with.
I love it. There is nothing more fun than when you're in production directing. To me, it's the closest thing you can get to doing cocaine with kind of no downside. You're just...
Now, I can't vouch for the cocaine part, but this is the point of the comment that I do agree with.
When you're there as an actor, as you guys know, you're like, when are we getting out of here? I arrive and I ask, when are we getting out of here? As a director, the thing flips entirely, where it's like, how long can we stay? I want to shoot. Now, and maybe we could add this thing, and like just that flip of wanting to be there and wanting more time. And
now that is definitely spot on, because of all the films and web series I've done, and Tracy, you've been on set for some of them. Actors just really do want to come in and like do their part and get out of there. But I personally, when I'm creating a project, and Bubble, you probably feel the same way about comedy. If you're creating something and kind of in charge of it, you could stay there all day and not understand, like, why do you want to go home, actor?
Yeah.
Because we're having so much fun, right?
Absolutely, I agree.
Let's get back to this podcast. The celebrity hosts not only take forever to ask a question, because I've talked to you about that before, but they've got so many questions within a question that they have to talk about how many questions they have put in there before we ever get an answer. And I don't have a lot of hair, but I'm ready to pull it out after listening to this.
Talk about that a little bit, and like why that was unstable for you, and what did that drive you to do or not do in your adult life? Like, how do you, and by the way, was comedy an escape from all of that as well? Did you like, I got to get out of here. The only way to deal with this is drugs, alcohol, and laughing.
Sorry, and Dax, be one. This is a 14-prong question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to parse this out. I think I heard, why are you a comedian and why are you an alcoholic? So let me try to sum that up.
Oh, so I'm coming through loud and clear then.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. He's still not answered the question, so I'm just going to speed up all the banter until he actually starts answering the question.
You go ahead.
So, look, I have a genetic predisposition.
Holy crap.
Are you kidding me?
That all of that stuff sped up was nothing to do with him answering the question. It was more banter about how Will Arnett takes Propecia, how he has 3 boys and no girls, and the others have girls and no boys. And I don't know how anybody listens to this.
That is crazy. Well, it must be on cocaine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's like random stuff that comes out of your mouth when you're doing that drug. It's just like you just keep talking and talking forever. None of it makes sense, but you're going real fast, so it sounds okay. So you just keep going and going and going and going, and there you go.
You might have hit
4
it.
hours later, you're still in the same bathroom with strangers you don't know, and there you go.
Oh my gosh. This is those kind of quote unquote popular podcasts that kind of drive me nuts because I don't know who's listening to this. Who is this for? I seriously don't know. Let me play something else here for you.
I mean, I think it is incredible, awesome, fantastic news that you're just right up on top of the mountain with what you're doing with your podcast. I just and you know we're 3 morons trying to see if we have any idea what the hell we're doing in this space.
You're an idiot, and I'm going to explain why you're an idiot, sir.
Here's the deal, Bubba. I have said to you a few times that are you sure you want to stick around for this part because I respect your time and everything. Dax tells over and over how he doesn't respect his guest's time, but this is his reason why.
You know, I interviewed Yuval Harari, and they're like, well, he's got to leave in an hour. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden I saw the person like signaling us he had to go. And in my mind, I would have bet my children's life on the fact that we had been talking for 12 minutes.
When I'm talking to somebody, I'm very aware of the clock. I have been given Terry Fader I interviewed. They're like, you got 20 minutes with him. I'm like, all right. I watched the clock the whole entire time. And yes, I got lost in the conversation, but I'm always respectful to know that he had to go. And I had to cut off the conversation.
And that's the thing in comedy. I mean, if he says he's a comedian, time in comedy is time in anything is the most precious thing you can have. But time in comedy, if you get a shot, I did the Comedy Store, and they said you got 7 minutes, and 7 minutes means 7 minutes. You got to respect that clock. If you 7 minutes, you get off and you give someone else a shot. There's comics that don't do that and they're criticized for it. But I mean, time is everything.
Can you imagine if he just was like, oh, no, I'm really on a roll here. I got to keep going.
Right. And if you're big enough, like Dave Chappelle would go up for like 3 hours, but he's Dave Chappelle. He can do whatever he wants.
Right. Anyway, we'll close up with this.
Love you guys.
Yeah, the feeling is not mutual. All right. That does it. That's the podcast plug. That was all from a show called Smartless. I feel like I might just have to listen to the rest of the episodes to see if they get any better.
I don't even know if I can, man. That was like a trailer that was bad,
Well, it was the conversation that was sped up between the question and him answering it, which was over like 3.5 minutes of a delay to get an answer to a question you really didn't care about anyway. But
that's painful.
That's crazy.
Thanks for sitting through it with us, Bubba.
Yeah, thanks, Bubba. It was great talking to you again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I hope it was good. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a couple of brain moments. It's funny that I was saying I can just get back on stage and be okay. And first time I've done an interview or a podcast in a minute, and I felt a little dusty, but I appreciate you for having me on.
No, you did great. And seriously, when you do your podcast, we'll review it very nicely for you.
I really appreciate that. I had 10 episodes. It was just all things country. I had like writers, boxers, country stars. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun, and it was starting to get good, and then I just kind of dropped out of everything. I had a little bit of I had to get out of Nashville. It was just becoming a lot. So I went in the woods, and I bought a piece of property, and I fixed up a house on the property and kind of went off grid for like 8-9 months, and just kind of then got back into it. So it's but I appreciate y'all having me on.
Time to get back on the grid, right?
Yeah, it's time to get back out there. And dude, I was just getting fed up with the politics of comedy and the glad handing, all that. I could never do it. My manager once said, he's like, you need to talk to these bookers and you need to ask them how their day is and how their kids are. And I'm like, I don't, and it sounds crass to me to say this, but I'm like, I don't care how they are. They're not my friends. I offer a service. They provide, I want to let my work speak for itself. I never wanted to kind of suck up like that. And I always struggled with that because I can't do it. I'm not good at it. I go and do a good job, and then you book me. That's how it works. I don't need to pretend like I care how your day is if I don't really know you.
Yeah.
I know it sounds mean, but it's just I never like that aspect of it.
Yeah, never become politically correct in your business, man. It to me, it makes you a comedian die.
Yeah, well, it's becoming harder and harder to even do that now because everybody is, you can't say this, you can't say that, and everyone's sensitive. And it's like comedy's supposed to be one of the last bastions of free speech.
Yep.
We're going to get back out. We're going to do some things, so it's going to be fun.
As we close out the show this week, don't forget to follow us on social media. As we go through this interview with Bubba Bradley, he had a couple of stories where I'm going to have to put them in the private group. So now this is your definite need to go join Sharpie Nation on Facebook, because I will post those stories. There was at least one of them, if not maybe two of them, that I will reserve for the private Facebook group so that we don't offend the younger audience, because we know that they're out there.
Wait, you can't use that? Come on.
I can't. I can use it. I can. But remember, we attract a lot of Disney and Nickelodeon people, and a couple of them weren't appropriate for that.
Disney and Nickelodeon, they kind of, do that kind of
I would
PG
like to
rating
keep,
sometimes.
I would like to keep my publicists happy. Therefore, join Sharpie Nation if you want to hear some stories that didn't make it into the show. Fair enough?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Tracy, thanks so much for being here this week and bringing us Bubba Bradley. We do appreciate it a lot.
It's a good time. Thanks again.
All right, Tracy's going to join us in future episodes. He's got at least one more guest that he's going to bring us. We'd love to have you back anytime, man.
I'd love to be here.
All right. Fancounters is on Facebook. If you search there, join Sharpie Nation for those private stories, and always look for us on Instagram at Fancounters Live. Lastly, if you're bored this week, even if you're not, go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. We need 9,000 reviews just to catch up to this show we played today. And your help would be appreciated. Tell a friend, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.